I, 26F, am married to a man who loved his mother more than he loved me. I just did not know it until that Sunday dinner. The roast beef was dry as usual, but I smiled and said it was delicious. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, watched me with her small, critical eyes. She never believed my compliments. She never believed in me. My husband, Mark, 28M, sat at the head of the table. He was a good man, or so I had convinced myself. He worked hard. He said he loved me, but his spine had a habit of dissolving whenever his mother was in the room. He became her son again, not my husband. His sister, Chloe, sat across from me, picking at her food. She was a silent witness to our family's slow-motion train wreck. We had been saving for 3 years. Every spare dollar, every bonus, every tax refund went into a joint savings account. The goal was a down payment on a small house with a yard, a place to call our own, a place far away from Eleanor. We had finally reached our goal, $50,000. It sat in that account, a testament to our shared dream. Eleanor cleared her throat. The sound was like gravel grinding. "So, Mark," she began, ignoring me completely, "have you made a decision about the money?" I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. What money? What decision? Mark had not mentioned any decision. He had just confirmed our savings goal was met last week. We were supposed to start looking at houses. Mark put his fork down. He looked at his mother, a strange mix of pride and apology in his eyes. He did not look at me. "Yes, I have," he said, his voice loud in the quiet dining room. "I have decided what to do with the money." A cold dread started in my stomach. This was not about a house. I could feel it. This was something else, something I was not a part of. "Well?" Eleanor prompted, a smug little smile playing on her lips. She knew. Whatever this was, she was in on it. Mark took a deep breath. He finally turned his head and his eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. There was no warmth in them. There was only a cold finality. He then looked back at his mother. "The money is going to the only one who deserves it." The words hung in the air. Bark. A laugh that said I was foolish. A laugh that said I was powerless. "Sarah, sit down," he said, still chuckling. "You are making a scene." "I am making a scene." His words echoed in my head. He had just detonated our life savings, our shared dream, in the middle of Sunday dinner, and I was the one making a scene. The injustice of it was a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. I stood there, mute and trembling, as he and his mother exchanged a look of perfect understanding. I was the outsider. I was the problem. My mind started to work again, slowly at first, then with a frantic energy. I had to get out of there. I turned without a word and walked out of the dining room. I could hear Eleanor's voice behind me, dripping with false concern. "Oh dear. She is so sensitive." I grabbed my purse and my keys from the small table in the hallway. I did not bother with my coat. The cold night air was a welcome shock to my system as I walked to my car. I did not look back. I did not want to see Mark coming after me. I did not think he would. The drive home was a blur. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. The laughter. That was the worst part. It was not just that he had betrayed me. It was that he had enjoyed it. He had wanted to humiliate me. He had wanted to show me my place in his family, and that place was at the bottom. I got back to our small apartment. It felt cold and empty. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, was a reminder of a life that now felt like a lie. We had picked out that couch together. We had framed that photo from our honeymoon. It all seemed like a cruel joke now. I went straight to the small desk in the corner of our living room. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to know what he had done. My fingers trembled as I opened my laptop and navigated to the bank's website. I logged into our joint account. The page loaded, and I clicked on the Savings tab. I expected the balance to be zero. I expected to see a single massive transfer to Eleanor's account. But that is not what I saw. The balance was indeed almost zero. There were only a few $100s left, but there was no single large transfer. Instead, I saw a history of withdrawals heard of. Oak Ridge Holdings, LLC. It was not his mother's name. It made no sense. He had not just given the money to his mother. He had done something else with it. Something secret. Something he had gone to great lengths to hide. The laughter at the dinner table took on a new, more sinister meaning. He was not just laughing at my shock. He was laughing at my ignorance. He thought I would never find out. He thought I was too stupid to look. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating my face. The anger was still there, a burning coal in my chest. But now something else was there too. A cold, hard resolve. He had made a mistake. He had underestimated me. He thought the game was over. I knew it had just begun. I was going to find out what Oak Ridge Holdings was. I was going to find out where every single penny of our money had gone. And then, I was going to make him pay. Not just for the money, but for the laugh. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Every scenario I played out was worse than the last. Was he gambling? Was he in debt? Who was he paying? The questions circled and circled, and I had no answers. The one thing I knew for sure was that I could not trust Mark. I could not even ask him. He would just lie again. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I could not face my coworkers. I could not pretend that my life had not just imploded. My first real step was to call my best friend Jessica. She was a financial analyst at a small firm. She was smart, sharp, and the most practical person I knew. "Jess, can I ask you a huge favor?" I said, my voice hoarse. "Anything, Sarah. You sound awful. What is wrong?" she asked, her tone instantly shifting from casual to concerned. I hesitated. I was not ready to tell her everything. It was too humiliating. "It is about my bank account," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mark and I have a joint savings, and I am seeing some transfers that I do not understand. They are labeled as investments, but they look weird to me." "Weird how?" Jessica asked. "They are going to a company called Oak Ridge Holdings LLC. Have you ever heard of it?" Said it out loud. "What?" Jessica's voice was sharp. "Sarah, that is your entire house down payment. What is Mark doing?" "I do not know," I said, and the tears I had been holding back finally started to fall. "He will not tell me. He just says it is an investment." "That is not an investment, Sarah. That is a secret," Jessica said firmly. "You need to find out what is going on, and you need to protect yourself. The first thing you should do is open a new bank account in your name only, and you need to change your direct deposit from work immediately." Her practical advice cut through my panic. It was a concrete step, something I could do. "Okay," I said, wiping my eyes. "Okay, I can do that." "Good," she said. "And Sarah, be careful. If he is hiding this, he is not going to be happy that you are looking into it." She was right. I knew she was right. After I hung up with Jessica, I spent the morning doing exactly what she said. I opened a new checking and savings account online. Then I logged into my work portal and redirected my paycheck. It felt like a small act of rebellion, but it was mine. It was the first step in taking back control. That afternoon, I decided to take another step. I was going to drive to that post office. I did not know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. But I had to do something. I could not just sit in our apartment, surrounded by his lies. The drive was long and quiet. I played music, but I did not hear it. My mind was consumed with possibilities. Each one was darker than the last. When I finally arrived in the small, sleepy town, I found the post office easily. It was a small brick building on a quiet main street. I parked my car across the street and just watched for a while. I felt like a private detective in a bad movie. People came and went, mailing letters, picking up packages. I had no idea who I was looking for. I did not even know what I was doing there. After about an hour, a familiar car pulled up in front of the post office. It was Eleanor's dark blue sedan. My breath caught in my throat. I watched as she got out of the car, carrying a small, crisp envelope. She walked into the post office and came out a few minutes later, empty-handed. She had mailed something. To the post office box. The post office box belonging to Oak Ridge Holdings. It was all connected. Sitting on the couch, pretending to read a book. I had spent hours rehearsing what I would say. I needed to be calm. I needed to be strategic. "Hey," he said, dropping his keys on the table. He leaned down to kiss me, but I turned my head slightly, and his lips brushed my cheek. He straightened up, a frown on his face. "What is wrong?" "We need to talk, Mark," I said, closing my book. "About Sunday?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I am sorry if my mom was a little harsh. You know how she is." "This is not about your mom being harsh," I said, my voice level. "This is about you. This is about our money." His face hardened. "I told you, Sarah. It is handled. It is an investment." "I want to know what kind of investment," I pushed. "I looked at the account, Mark. You have been taking money out for months. It is all gone. Our entire savings. Where did it go?" "It is none of your business," he snapped. The words were like a slap in the face. None of my business? Half of that money was mine. I had worked overtime shifts. I had packed my lunch every day for 3 years. I had sacrificed just as much as he had. "None of my business?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Mark, that was our future. Our house. How can you say it is none of my business?" "Because I am the man of this house, and I handle the finances," he said, his voice cold and hard. "You need to learn to trust me." "Trust you?" I stood up, the book falling to the floor. "You stood in front of your family and announced that you were giving our money away. You laughed at me when I was humiliated, and now you are telling me to trust you? How can I possibly trust you?" "I was making a point," he said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "My mother has done everything for me. She sacrificed so much. She deserves to be taken care of." "Taken care of with my money?" I shot back. "We are not taking care of her, Mark. We are barely taking care of ourselves. We live in a tiny apartment while we save for a house you just threw away." "It is not informed," I corrected him. "What is Oak Ridge Holdings, Mark? And what does your mother have to do with it?" "It is a family matter," he said, turning away from me. "It has nothing to do with you. Anything that involves $50,000 of my money has everything to do with me," I said, stepping in front of him, blocking his path to the bedroom. "You are going to tell me what is going on, right now." He looked at me, his jaw tight. For a second, I thought he might push past me. But instead, he just stared at me with a look of pure contempt. "You would not understand," he said finally. "It is complicated." "Try me," I said. He shook his head. "No. You have done enough damage for one day. Snooping in our bank account, following my mother. You need to back off, Sarah. I am warning you." He shouldered past me and went into the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I stood alone in the living room, my heart pounding. He had not confessed, but he had confirmed everything. He was hiding something. His mother was involved, and he was willing to destroy our marriage to protect his secret. The warning was clear. But I was not going to back off. I was going to push harder. The next day, I called Chloe. It was a long shot, but she was my only other link to the family's inner workings. She was always more sympathetic to me than Eleanor, but she was also terrified of her mother. "Hi, Chloe," I said when she answered. "Do you have a minute to talk?" Sure, Sarah," she said, her voice hesitant. "Is everything okay? Mark said you were not feeling well after dinner." "I am fine," I said, deciding to be direct. "Chloe, I need to ask you about something. It is important. Do you know anything about a company called Oak Ridge Holdings?" There was a dead silence on the line. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. I do not know what you are talking about," she stammered. "Chloe, please," I begged. "Mark has drained our savings account, all of it. He sent it to this company. And I saw your mother at the post office where this company has a P.O. box. I know you know something." "I cannot talk about this," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Sarah, you need to just drop." Chloe was shutting me out. I was completely on my own in this. But her fear told me something important. This secret was big, it was old, and it was powerful enough to make a grown woman terrified of her own mother. I had to find another way in. Jessica's words came back to me. Shell Corporation. Registered agent. I went back to my laptop and did a business search for Oak Ridge Holdings LLC. The registered agent was a law firm in the city. The name of the agent was listed, Arthur Finch. I stared at the name. It meant nothing to me. But it was a lead. It was a person. I could not just call him and ask about a secret company. He would never tell me anything. I needed a reason. I needed leverage. My mind went back to Chloe's words. A long time ago. It had to be related to Mark's father. He had passed away about 10 years ago. Mark always spoke of him in reverent tones. He was a brilliant businessman, a pillar of the community, a perfect father. But what if that was a lie? What if the family business was a mess he had left behind? I started a new line of research. I searched for old news articles about Mark's father, Robert. I found dozens of them. Articles about his charity work, his successful construction company, his sudden death from a heart attack. It was all glowing praise. There was no hint of scandal. But what if the scandal was never made public? What if someone knew something and was using it? My eyes landed on a box tucked away on the top shelf of our closet. It was Mark's box of his father's things. He never opened it. He said it was too painful. But he had moved it with us from our last apartment. It was a piece of his father he could not let go of. My heart pounded. Mark had warned me to back off. He had accused me of snooping. Going through that box felt like a massive violation of his trust. But he had already violated my trust in every way imaginable. He had forfeited his right to privacy when he stole our future. That night, I waited until Mark was sound asleep. His back was to me, his breathing deep and even. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could. My hands were shaking as I pulled a chair into the closet and carefully lifted the dusty cardboard box from the top shelf. I took it into the months before Robert's death. I unfolded the single sheet of paper. The words were typed, cold and precise. "Robert," it began, "I know what you did. I have the documents to prove it. The building inspections you forged, the cheap materials you used on the Miller building, the money you pocketed. It is all there. You built your reputation on a lie, and I can tear it all down." My blood turned to ice. Forged inspections? Cheap materials? This was not the man Mark had described. This was a criminal. I kept reading. "I do not want to go to the authorities. That would be messy for everyone. I just want what is fair. A small price to pay for my silence. I will be in touch with instructions." The letter was unsigned. I dug through the rest of the pile and found another one, dated a month later. It was from the same anonymous source. It detailed a payment plan, a way to funnel money through a series of accounts to avoid detection. It was a blackmail letter. And then I found the third letter. This one was handwritten, in a shaky, almost illegible scrawl. It was from Robert himself, addressed to Eleanor. It was a confession. "My dearest Eleanor," it read, "I am so sorry. He knows everything. I do not know what to do. I have paid him, but he wants more. He will always want more. I have ruined us. I have shamed our family name. I do not see a way out of this. Forgive me." It was a suicide note. The official story was that he had a heart attack. But this letter told a different story. He had been blackmailed into ruin, and he could not live with the shame. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the ugly truth of Mark's family. His heroic father was a fraud. His death was not a tragedy. It was a desperate escape. And someone was still holding this secret over their heads. The name of the building mentioned in the letter, the Miller Building, rang a bell. I quickly searched it on my laptop. It was a downtown office building. And then I saw it. An article from 9 years ago. Partial collapse at Miller Building. A section of the facade had crumbled and fallen to the street. Miraculously, no one was seriously injured, but the engineering report cited substandard materials and faulty construction. The original person who deserves it was not Eleanor herself. It was her twisted idea of family honor. She felt she deserved to have this secret buried, no matter the cost. And Mark, her dutiful son, was the one paying the price. Our money was the price. A cold, hard anger settled deep in my bones. It was a righteous anger. They had not just lied to me. They had built their entire family identity on a foundation of lies. They had made me feel small and unworthy, all while they were the ones hiding a disgusting secret. I carefully put the letters back in the box. But I did not put all of them back. I kept the 2 blackmail letters and Robert's confession. I took pictures of them with my phone, and then I hid the originals in a secure place where Mark would never find them. This was it. This was the leverage I needed. This was not just about getting my money back anymore. This was about tearing down the whole rotten structure of their lies. They had laughed at me. They had called me selfish and dramatic. Now, I was going to show them what real drama looked like. I had the truth in my hands, and I was going to use it like a weapon. They thought they had all the power. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The next few days were a strange performance. I went to work. I came home. I cooked dinner. I was a model of calm normalcy. On the surface, I had accepted Mark's warning to back off. I did not mention the money. I did not ask any more questions. Mark seemed to relax. He thought he had won. He thought his intimidation had worked. He started being kinder to me, as if to reward my good behavior. He would bring me flowers. He would suggest we watch a movie. It was all a performance on his part, too, an attempt to smooth things over, to pretend the gaping wound in our marriage did not exist. I played along. I smiled at the right times. I accepted his hollow gestures of affection. But inside, I was a coiled spring. Every smile was a lie. Every moment of feigned peace was a moment I was using to plan. I knew I could not just confront him alone. He would deny it. He would twist it. He would find a way to make it my fault. I needed an audience. I needed to do this in front of his mother, the architect of this whole disaster.
Call them now.
He was so eager, so confident. He had no idea he was arranging his own execution. The next day, I spent the afternoon cooking. I made his favorite meal, a lemon herb chicken with roasted potatoes and asparagus. I even baked a chocolate cake from scratch. The entire apartment smelled warm and inviting. It was the perfect stage for what was about to happen. Eleanor and Chloe arrived at 7 o'clock. Eleanor walked in with her head held high, a queen surveying her territory. She gave me a curt nod. Chloe, on the other hand, looked nervous. She would not meet my eyes. We sat down at our small dining table. Mark was in high spirits, playing the gracious host. He poured wine for everyone. He complimented my cooking. He was trying so hard to project an image of a happy, stable marriage. We made it through the main course with painfully polite small talk. The weather. A boring story about Mark's coworker. Chloe's plans for the weekend. All of it was a meaningless prelude. The tension under the surface was so thick I could feel it in my teeth. Then, as I was clearing the plates for dessert, I made my move. "Mark," I said, stopping behind his chair. "Before we have cake, there is something I would like to discuss." The mood shifted instantly. Mark's smile faded. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Chloe looked down at her lap. "Sarah, not now," Mark said, his voice low and warning. "Yes, now," I said, my voice calm but firm. I walked back to my seat and sat down. I looked directly at him. "I want to talk about the $50,000. Eleanor let out an exasperated sigh. "For heaven's sake, Sarah! Are you still on about that? Your husband is handling his family's finances. It is not your concern." "It became my concern when he used my money," I said, my gaze not leaving Mark's face. "The money I earned. The money we were saving for our house. It is an investment," Mark said through gritted teeth. "I have told you this. It will benefit all of us." "Will it?" I asked. "Will it really? Or will it just benefit the reputation of a dead man?" Complete silence. Mark's face went white. Eleanor froze, a piece of bread halfway to her mouth. Chloe looked like she—
Then maybe you can explain this.
I turned the phone around and showed him the picture of the first blackmail letter. He stared at it, his eyes wide with horror. Where did you get that? He demanded, his voice shaking. I found them, I said simply. In the box you keep in the closet, the one that was too painful to open. I then swiped to the next picture. Robert's confession, his suicide note. Mark flinched as if I had physically struck him. And I found this, I said, his own words. It have ruined us. I have shamed our family name. This is the man you sacrificed our future for, a man who was a fraud and a coward. Eleanor stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. You little witch, she spat, her face contorted with rage. You went through his private things. You have no right. I have every right, I said, standing up to meet her gaze. My voice was steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, empowering certainty. I am no longer just standing up. I am in control. You and your son stole from me. You conspired behind my back to use my hard-earned money to pay off a blackmailer and protect a lie. You humiliated me. You dismissed me. You thought I was stupid. You thought I would just sit down and shut up. You were wrong. I turned my attention back to Mark. He was staring at the phone, his face a mess of confusion, anger, and dawning shame. Chloe was openly crying now, her hands covering her face. So this is what it was all about, I continued, my voice relentless. Not taking care of your mother, not some brilliant investment. It was blackmail. You have been paying someone to keep your father's dirty secrets buried. You do not understand, Mark mumbled, shaking his head. I had to. For the family. For his legacy. His legacy! I laughed, but it was not a humorous sound. It was harsh and brittle. His legacy is a building that almost collapsed. His legacy is a crime that he covered up. His legacy is a secret that has been poisoning this family for years. And you decided that my future was a fair price to pay to maintain that lie. Sarah, please, he said, finally looking up at me. His eyes were pleading. We can fix this. No, I said, the word of my words sink in. Mark and Eleanor stared at me, their faces pale with shock. And option 2? Mark asked, his voice barely a whisper. Option 2, I said, is that I take my evidence to a lawyer. We can sue you for the fraudulent use of joint funds. And just to make sure everyone understands the full context, I will also be sending copies of these letters to every newspaper in the city and to every single member of your extended family. All those cousins and aunts and uncles who still think your father was a saint. I will let them all know exactly what kind of man he was. His name will not be honored. It will be synonymous with fraud and shame for generations. Your mother's social standing will be destroyed. Your family will be a pariah. I looked from Mark's horrified face to Eleanor's. Her triumphant smirk from Sunday dinner was gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated terror. I had found her greatest fear. Not the loss of money, but the loss of face. The loss of her precious family name. The choice is yours, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. A quiet divorce where you pay me what you owe me. Or public, humiliating ruin. You have 24 hours to decide. I turned and walked into the kitchen, my hands finally starting to shake. I leaned against the counter, my heart pounding like a drum. I could hear them in the other room. Hushed, frantic whispers. Eleanor's voice, shrill and panicked. Mark's, low and defeated. I had done it. I had laid the trap, and they had walked right into it. The power had shifted. For the first time since I met him, I was the one in control. The laughter was over. The silence from the dining room was deafening. I stayed in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter to keep my hands steady. I could hear the muffled sounds of a frantic, whispered argument. Eleanor's voice was a sharp, panicked hiss. Mark's was a low, broken murmur. Chloe was just sobbing quietly. I had shattered their carefully constructed world with a few sheets of old paper. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, the whispering stopped. I heard a chair scrape back. Footsteps approached the kitchen. Mark appeared in the doorway. His face was at despair. Her carefully applied makeup was smudged where she had wiped away angry tears. You will regret this, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. You have destroyed this family. No, I said, finally looking directly at her. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute conviction. You destroyed this family a long time ago. You destroyed it when you decided that a lie was more important than your own son's happiness. You destroyed it when you taught him that it was okay to deceive and steal from his own wife. This is not my fault. This is the consequence of your choices. She opened her mouth to say something else, something vicious, but Mark put a hand on her arm. Mom, stop, he said, his voice dull. It is over. Let's just go. He steered her out of the kitchen. Chloe followed behind them, her head down. She paused at the door and looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. I am so sorry, Sarah, she whispered. I just nodded. I did not have the energy for anything else. I listened as they gathered their things and left. The click of the front door closing was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was alone, in the apartment that was no longer ours, surrounded by the remnants of a meal that was supposed to be a peace offering, but had become a declaration of war. I sank onto a kitchen chair, the adrenaline finally leaving my body, replaced by a deep, bone-crushing exhaustion. I had done it. I had won. But I felt hollowed out. I had exposed their lies, but in doing so, I had to accept the full, ugly truth of the life I had been living. My marriage was a sham. The man I loved was a weak, deceitful stranger. His family was a nest of secrets and poison. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics. True to his word, Mark signed the papers without a fight. My lawyer handled everything. The divorce was processed with surprising speed. It was an uncontested separation. There was nothing left to contest. The first payment from Mark arrived in my new bank account exactly 1 month after the dinner. $2,083, the first of 12 installments. Seeing the money there was not satisfying. It was just a grim reminder of what I had lost and what I was owed. Something made me press the green button. Hello? I said. Sarah? It is Chloe, the voice on the other end said. She sounded hesitant, nervous. I hope it is okay that I am calling. I got your new number from a mutual friend. It is fine, Chloe, I said, sitting down on a packing box. What is it? I wanted to talk, she said. I wanted to apologize. Properly. You already did, I reminded her. No, I know, but I needed to say more, she rushed on. I am so sorry for what they did to you. For what I let them do. I knew it was wrong. I knew Mark was taking the money, and I knew why. I was too scared to say anything. Scared of your mother? I asked gently. Yes, she admitted, her voice small. She has always been like that, controlling everything, everyone, especially Mark. She never thought you were good enough for him, for our family. She saw you as a threat to her control over him. And the secret about your father? I asked. You knew about that too? Not all of it, she said. I knew there was some old debt, something shameful. Mom always talked about protecting Dad's legacy. She drilled it into Mark's head that it was his duty as a son to clean up the mess. She told him that any real man would do whatever it takes to protect his family's honor. Her words painted a grim picture. It was not just about the money. It was about years of emotional manipulation. Eleanor had twisted Mark's love for his father into a weapon, using it to control him and justify her own selfish desires. She convinced him that since you earned less than he did, your contribution to the savings was less important, Chloe continued, her voice filled with shame. She told him it was really his money, and he had the right to decide how to use it for the good of the family. It was sick, and I just stood by and watched. It is not your fault, Chloe, I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. She is your mother. It is hard to stand up to that. But you did, she said, a note of awe in her voice. You stood up to all of them. I have never seen anyone do that, especially not to Mom. Give me a huge hug. Look at you, she said, beaming. You look lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted, sinking into the chair. Like I have been carrying 100-pound weight on my back for years and did not even know it. That weight was named Mark and Eleanor, she said dryly, taking a sip of her latte. I am so proud of you, Sarah. You handled that like a boss. You gathered your intel, you built your case, and you went in for the kill. It was magnificent. I laughed. It did not feel magnificent. It felt awful. Of course it did, she said, her expression softening. Your marriage ended. You had to confront the fact that your husband was a spineless thief, but you did not let them crush you. You fought back. You got what you were owed. That is a victory. I guess so, I said. It just feels strange. My life is completely different now. It is better, she said firmly. You are free. You have your own place. You have your own money. You have a future that you get to decide. No more walking on eggshells around a bitter old woman. No more wondering if your husband is lying to you. That is not just better, Sarah. That is everything. Her words resonated with me. She was right. I was free. The pain was still there, a dull ache where my old life used to be. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. I had a blank slate. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. The months passed. The monthly payments from Mark continued to arrive like clockwork. I never heard from him directly. I never heard from Eleanor again. They had vanished from my life as completely as if they had never existed. I focused on myself. I threw myself into my work. I reconnected with old friends. I started hiking on the weekends, exploring the trails outside the city. I slowly started to build a new life, one that was entirely my own. One day, about 8 months after the divorce, I ran into a mutual friend of Mark's and mine at the grocery store. Her name was Lisa. We had never been close, but we had always been friendly. "Sarah!" "Oh my God, hi!" she said, her eyes wide. "I have not seen you in forever. How are you?" "I am good, Lisa."
Moments like this.
It was true, and it gave nothing away. It did not invite more questions. It closed the door on the drama. "Well, it is great to see you looking so happy," she said. "You are glowing." We said our goodbyes, and I continued with my shopping. Her words echoed in my mind. "He looks miserable." I should have felt some satisfaction from that, some sense of vindictive pleasure, but I did not. I just felt a distant, detached pity. He had made his choice. He had chosen his mother's approval and a life built on lies over a future with me. He was living with the consequences of that choice, and I was living with the consequences of mine. On the 1-year anniversary of that final, horrible dinner, the last payment from Mark appeared in my account. The total was now $25,000. He had paid his debt. I was whole again, at least financially. I transferred the money from my checking account into a new high-yield savings account. An account with only one name on it. Mine. I labeled it down payment. The dream was not dead. It was just deferred. And now, it was mine alone. I thought about Mark and Eleanor. I wondered what they were doing. I pictured them in that stuffy, dark house, their lives small and constrained by the secret they had fought so hard to protect. They had won, in a way. The secret was still safe. The family name was still intact, at least to the outside world. But they were trapped by it. They were prisoners in a jail of their own making. I looked around my small, bright apartment. The sun was streaming through the window. I had a new painting on the wall, a vibrant abstract I had bought at a local art fair. My bookshelf was overflowing with books I had been meaning to read. My hiking boots were by the door, ready for my next adventure. My life was not perfect. It was not the life I had planned. But it was real, and it was mine. Mark had laughed at me. He had thought my silence in that moment of humiliation was a sign of weakness. He thought I would just crumble. He never understood that my silence was not surrender. It was the quiet moment before the storm. It was the sound of me gathering my strength. It was me getting ready. They had wanted to make me feel small. Of a couple holding hands. The betrayal had left a scar, and like any deep wound, it ached from time to time. but the sharp, debilitating pain had faded into a dull, manageable throb. It was a part of my story, but it no longer defined it. I kept in touch with Chloe. Our phone calls became a regular thing. She was my only remaining link to that part of my life, but our conversations were rarely about the past. She would tell me about her job, her dating life, her struggles to carve out an identity separate from her mother. In a strange way, my dramatic exit had inspired her. "I moved out," she announced one day, her voice buzzing with a mixture of terror and excitement. "I got a tiny apartment downtown. Mom is furious. She says I have abandoned the family." "Good for you, Chloe," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "That is a huge step." "I could not have done it if I had not seen you do it first," she confessed. "You showed me it was possible to survive outside of her orbit. You have no idea how much that meant to me." She told me that Mark was still living at home. He had a new job, but all his money went into the household. Eleanor managed his finances completely now, to make sure he does not make any more foolish mistakes. He was a son again, in every sense of the word. A 30-year-old man living under his mother's thumb, paying for the privilege of protecting a dead man's lies. It was a pathetic, self-inflicted life sentence. My own life, in contrast, felt expansive. I got a promotion at work. The extra income allowed me to start saving more aggressively for my down payment. The number in my savings account grew steadily, a quiet testament to my independence and hard work. I also started dating again. It was tentative at first. I was wary, my trust shattered. My first few dates were awkward and brief. I was quick to spot red flags, quick to retreat. Jessica told me I was being too guarded. "You cannot let what Mark did ruin your chance at happiness," she advised me over wine one evening. "Not all men are spineless mama's boys." "I know," I sighed, "but it is hard to let my guard down." "Just be smart," she said. "You have good instincts. Trust them. You trusted them when you knew something was the best thing that ever happened to me." I did not tell him the whole story. Not then. It was too much, too soon. But I told him enough. I told him that my ex-husband had not been honest about finances and that our priorities were fundamentally different. "That sounds tough," he said, his eyes full of empathy. "Money can be a huge source of stress in a relationship if you are not on the same page." "It was not just the money," I found myself saying. "It was the lies. I cannot be with someone I cannot trust." "I get that," he said, nodding. "Trust is everything." It was a simple conversation, but it felt significant. He was not afraid of my past. He did not press for details. He just listened and understood. For the first time, I felt like I could maybe, eventually, build something new with someone. As the months with Ben turned into a year, my life began to feel full in a way it never had with Mark. My relationship with Ben was a partnership of equals. We talked about everything, including money. We had separate accounts but shared financial goals. It was transparent and respectful. It was normal. And it felt like a revelation. One Saturday, Ben and I were looking at online real estate listings, just for fun. We were not seriously planning to buy a place together yet, but we liked to dream. We were scrolling through pictures of small starter homes when a particular listing caught my eye. It was a small, charming bungalow with a big front porch and a huge oak tree in the front yard. It was in a quiet, established neighborhood. It was perfect, and it was in my price range. My down payment fund was finally large enough. "Ben, look at this one," I said, my heart starting to beat a little faster. He leaned over my shoulder. "Oh, that is a cute one," he said. "Look at that yard." I think I want to see it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Really?" he asked, a big smile spreading across his face. "Yeah? Let's do it. Call the agent." I made the appointment for the following afternoon. I was a nervous wreck all day. This was it, the dream I had been working toward for so long, the dream that had been stolen and that I had painstakingly rebuilt on my own terms. Walking into that house, hand aching by the end of it. But when the lawyer slid the keys across the table to me, none of that mattered. They were my keys. To my house. I drove straight from the lawyer's office to my new home. I walked through the empty rooms, the sound of my footsteps echoing. I ran my hand along the cool plaster of the walls. I stood in the middle of the living room and just breathed. I had done it. A few weeks after I moved in, as I was unpacking the last of my boxes, I came across a small, forgotten album of photos from my wedding. I sat on the floor and flipped through the pages. There I was, smiling and hopeful, standing next to a man I did not really know. There was Eleanor, her smile thin and forced even then. I felt a pang of sadness for that younger, more naive version of myself. She had wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. She had ignored so many red flags because she was in love with the idea of a life, not the reality of the man. I closed the album. I did not need it anymore. I walked it out to the trash can in my new garage and dropped it inside. It was time to let go of the last ghost. That evening, Ben came over with a bottle of champagne to celebrate. We sat on the front porch of my house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "To your new home," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "You earned this." "We should have a housewarming party," I said, taking a sip of the bubbly champagne. "Definitely," he agreed. "Who should we invite?" "Jessica, of course," I started, "and my friends from work. And yours." I paused for a moment, an idea forming in my mind. A small, wicked smile played on my lips. "What?" Ben asked, noticing my expression. "I think I should invite Chloe," I said. "Your ex-sister-in-law?" he asked, surprised. "Are you sure that is a good idea?" "I am sure," I said. "She deserves to see this. She deserves to see what life can look like when you get out." The party was a few weeks later. My house was filled with the sounds of laughter and music. It was a perfect, warm summer evening. My friends and Ben's friends mingled easily. The whole house was alive with happiness. Chloe arrived late, looking bitter little laugh escaping her lips. She went on a rant for an hour, how it was not fair, how you must have gotten money from some rich new boyfriend. She could not accept the idea that you did this on your own. Of course she could not, I said. In her world, a woman cannot be successful without a man. "I told her," Chloe said, turning to look at me, her eyes shining with a newfound strength. "I told her she was wrong. I told her you were the strongest person I knew, and that you did it all by yourself because you were smart and capable, and because you were finally free from them." "What did she say?" I asked. "She told me I was being disrespectful, and that I was no daughter of hers," Chloe said with a shrug. "So I guess I am an orphan now." But she was smiling as she said it. We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, watching my friends laugh and talk under the warm glow of the lights. "He made his choice," Chloe said finally. "He chose to stay small, to stay under her thumb. And you chose to grow." I looked around at the life I had built, the beautiful house, the wonderful man holding my hand, the friends who had supported me, the peace in my heart. She was right. I had grown. I had taken the ugliest, most painful experience of my life, and I had turned it into a foundation for something beautiful. The party wound down late in the night. After the last guest had left, Ben and I stood on the porch, looking out at the quiet street. "That was a great party," he said, wrapping his arm around me. "It was," I agreed, leaning my head on his shoulder. I thought back to that Sunday dinner so long ago. The dry roast beef, the smug look on Eleanor's face, the sound of Mark's dismissive laugh. It all felt like a scene from someone else's life, a bad dream I had finally woken up from. He had meant for that laughter to break me. He had meant for that humiliation to put me in my place forever. But all it had done was light a fire under me. It was the catalyst that forced me to save myself. My revenge was not the dramatic confrontation at the dinner table. It was not the fear in their eyes when I revealed their secret. My real revenge was this quiet, happy, peaceful life. A life they could never touch